I'm Brian Downing, and today we'll be talking about some big ideas involving humanity's place in the universe, perhaps glean some insight what we can expect out of the universe, and talk about God and Creator. To approach that, we are going to start with numbers. So, let's get to it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at prime numbers real quick. So what I like about them is that, whether a number is prime or composite, this basic arithmetic property of quantities is absolutely immutable and unchanging, which is why many people are kind of attracted to figuring out what number is going to be prime or composite or whatever. Now, something that is commonly understood is that primes counting up towards infinity are very uncommon. However, at the beginning of the sequence, counting up from 1, 2, 3, they're actually very common. In fact, more common than composite numbers. So what occurs to me is I don't know where this point of parity is, which itself is going to be immutable. So one day I just wanted to examine that, and I'll show you how it goes. So we're going to start with the number 1. It is neither prime nor is it composite. And then we've got 2, which is prime. And then we've got 3, 4 is composite, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So at this point, at the number 9, the sequence is equal for the first time. But we'll continue on. We've got 10, 11, where am I? 11, 12, and 13. And that is where we are equal for the last time. Because we'll keep on counting just to show you. We've got 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and so you can see from this point, composite numbers are certainly going to outnumber primes counting forward. Now, I'm like, okay, that's neat. But it does occur to me that primes are in fact predominantly odd numbers. So then, just for fun, I decided to take another look at what that looked like. Comparing primes to composite numbers up to where they're equal, but only amongst odd numbers. So let's go ahead and get into that. All right, so this is it. Here is the entire chart of primes against composite numbers amongst odd numbers only. And so, of course, again, we've got 1 that's neither prime nor composite. And then all the way to here, prime numbers have been dominant over composites the entire way, up to the number 93, where they're equal for the first time. And from 95 forward, we have this little period of debate up until where they're equal for the last time at 117. And then, as you can see, going forward, again, like before, we see composite numbers outnumbering primes, and it's not even going to be close counting towards infinity. Yeah, so that's that. So we do have some actually very interesting things here. So now we're going to finally kind of get to the crux of everything. What I notice about this chart is that everything within this range where prime numbers have been dominant the entire time, these are all atomic numbers of naturally occurring elements. And this debate range are all atomic numbers of synthesized elements. And here we are at 117, which is the last odd numbered element of the periodic table. And 119 would be the beginning of the 8th period if ever we got there. But as of yet, such elements beyond this point have not been discovered yet. So they are only possible theoretically, but whether or not that's the case actually is yet to be seen. So that's very, very interesting. there's this correlation here with something that's strictly abstract and immutable, and basically the manifestation of all matter throughout the universe. So the other thing that this also lines up with is that, as we can see here, we've got, in terms of number of pairs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, as far as everything that's naturally occurring. So this lines up exactly with the human chromosome count, and even with the number 1, that's our mitochondrial DNA that you can account for also. So when we look at the universe, we see this measure of complexity that's pervasive throughout. That we understand these things about the elements that comprise our universe, or comprise the matter within our universe. This is decades and centuries worth of research and testing that we are able to make all these discoveries and have this understanding. So it is the most pervasive measure of complexity that we can discern, in our reality that we exist in. So it means it's basically, in short, very important. But now that means that gives value to this abstract idea of looking primes and composites at this way. And now that we understand that this has value, now we can discern that this particular chromosome count is actually special. Now, if you're looking at the human species, 2 pairs of 23 as far as chromosomes are concerned are not unique to us. But what is unique to us is our ability to communicate, to use our hands, to use our eyes. We have the ability of transmitting information through speech, and we can transfer information and bestow that upon downstream generations. Through various technologies, whether that be writing, recordings, just all this stuff that manifests purely out of human ingenuity. So that we have this confluence of these traits which allow us to make these discoveries over, albeit over a grand scale, over a vast expanse of time. We've got everything that we need to understand all of this, but oh hey, here's this structure in our body that kind of matches up with the universe and everything. So this kind of throws a monkey wrench into this idea that human development over the eons is a consequence purely of evolution, right? That happenstantially that we have all these traits, but we also have this chromosome count that, if you think about it, is having a species with our specific traits, is it strictly necessary to our survival to have any specific kind of chromosome count? And so that kind of begs the question, what's really going on here? I would think that this isn't an accident, that there's perhaps some intelligent hand that dictated this outcome. So keeping in line with this idea that humanity could very well have an intelligent creator, this opens up a lot of possibility for what could be going on with the rest of the universe. The universe being so old and so expansive, there's just so much room for so much to be going on. So, if you want to go by this principle that everything occurs in degrees, especially with so much possibility, you would think any creator of ours could be creating intelligent life on other worlds of various kinds of archetypes, or more of what's like us as well. So say even if we're working with the possibility that we're dealing with other humanoid intelligent life, you're also looking at the same possibility that the consideration for giving us a very special chromosome count was also done with them. So now if we have two different humanoid species arising on different worlds, adapted to different worlds, with the same chromosome count, now we're dealing with the possibility that we very well could be genetically compatible with one another. So that opens up a lot of really interesting possibilities as well. And so even if it's, say, even possible that two different species could be compatible, say one comes to Earth, well, I mean, is it possible that that's going to happen in the future, or is it possible that it's already happened? So now that we're looking at something like that, there could very well be an entire interstellar community of intelligent life that we're very similar to and very well could be related to, if however distantly. Yeah, so that's something really interesting to kind of contemplate there. And so if ever, aliens did come down from the sky, it's like looking in the mirror, basically. So yeah, something very interesting to think about. All right, so we have these three elements: the relationship between prime numbers and composite numbers, the periodic table of elements, and the human chromosome count. And altogether, all three of these elements have been known for the last, I'd say, about 65 years. And considering that there's billions of people on the planet, that's a long span of time with so much potential for people to stumble upon this discovery. I found it very curious why, I stumbled upon this independently of anybody else. And, with these implications being so potentially profound, why is this not common knowledge? I found it very curious. So one of the first things I did was that I wanted to examine when all these discoveries were made. Now, as far as recognizing, the properties of numbers, prime numbers, composite, and whatnot, that's way off in the distant past since time immemorial. But the other two elements, we can look at least at the last 200 years. So in terms of the discovery of the structure of the periodicity of the periodic table, that's probably going to be around 1869. So let's say right about here. We've got Dmitry Mendeleev coming forth with his observations of periodicity, and it's the basis for the periodic table as we know it today. Although the periodic table, so at that time I'd say there would be roughly about 60 elements that had been discovered, so there's a lot of gaps, and the structure isn't recognized to its completion at that point. But again, it is the beginning point, and I'd say the periodic table as we would recognize it today would certainly be realized by 1945, which is here. All right. So we have this 80-year gap, or this 80-year span roughly, where there is possibility that someone could recognize what's going on with the elements, and maybe if they stumbled upon that relationship with prime and composite numbers, they could make some possible connection. It'd be very difficult, but somewhere in this range it very well could be possible. And then going forward, if we have the periodic table as we recognize it today, in this blue region, this is actually a pretty good bet someone could find it. Now, and then with the other element of the human chromosome count, that comes about at about 1923. So we're going to be roughly right here. But interestingly enough, at that point, it was thought that the human chromosome count was 2 pairs of 24. It's not corrected until 1956. So we're going to have this red range of this of human chromosome count here. And then from 1956 forward, that's roughly 65, 66 years ago, we've got the other element. And through all this span of time, of course, we've got prime and composite numbers, and people can do all sorts of fancy schmancy number stuff with that. All right, so here we go. We have the sequence, right? We've got 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on and so forth, equal at 93, boom, 117. Rough representation of the sequence, really rough. But we actually have a very interesting structure to the numbers here. So in terms of the population, this top part being all naturally occurring elements and in association with our chromosome count, we can represent that as 1 and 2 23s. There we have it. And then in its full form, it's going to be 1 and 2 29s. So we actually have something that looks like a date line in each case. Fun fact, Monday. Also a Monday. Get your tinfoil hats, right? Anyway, just kidding. If that means anything, it's beyond my knowing. Anyway, but yeah, but what's really interesting is that we actually do have a confluence of this particular date line as it's more important and relates to our chromosome count, and then the culmination of the entire sequence, 117. And that confluence is the United States of America. We're currently in our 117th Congress, and that Congress is in session until January 3rd of 2023. Okay. So let us examine how we got to this point. So, if we want the endpoint of Congress to fall on the exact correct year, we need our present form of government to begin in 1789, which is what we have. That's when George Washington became president, and that's when we had our first Congress of the present form of the United States of American government. So, now of course, back then, during the time of the Founding Fathers, the transition of power occurred on March 4th. So, and that remained the case until 1933. So, we'll have that being 1, boo, 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 boo. And then from 1933 going forward, they changed it to the new date. Now you could say, Brian, that's a 20-day difference, that's awfully close, but no cigar. Here's something really interesting about the ratification of the 20th Amendment. Is that occurred on January 23rd of 1933. So we've got the correct year to get to the point and literally have a ratification on the day to get very close to that day. Yeah, so some interesting stuff. Now, I honestly have no idea what's going on with all this. But yeah, it's what is kind of extraordinary with this confluence of our structure of government up to this point, how it relates with this numeric relationship, and this date line that's associated with our chromosome count, and the manifestation of all naturally occurring elements. It's really interesting. So it is kind of incredible to think that what if our founding fathers accounted for all this, that somehow they knew all this really profound knowledge that I think of it like this. The premise of the United States, it's God bestowed upon man inalienable rights, that we're all created equal, that we're all entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That our disposition is that we are more willing to suffer injustice than really to do anything about it. So what if they set up America as this bastion of freedom and prosperity, and they put in these provisions to restructure its own government if ever it came to the point that it did not serve the people anymore, right? So they build this house, and if ever that house was to be infiltrated, it's booby-trapped, right? So, it's things like that that kind of make me wonder that they chose that date of 1789 as the beginning of their government because they had planned for a transition on this auspicious date of January 23rd, 2023 somehow. I mean, we do have a midterm election immediately beforehand. If that was to happen, people would have to wake up right quick that stuff ain't right with this country, and we need to have a change in that manner. So yeah, I mean, whether this this usurpation of our government by bad actors, whether that's just like the natural state of mankind, that would be an inevitability, or that there was a silo of power that was nefarious even back in their day, and that had survived up to this point to actually do it itself. I don't know. But if we regard the founding fathers as their own silo of power, did that manifest? Did not that it manifest, but did it survive to this day? And it's not strictly clear, but maybe they did manifest certain language pertaining to God, country, patriotism. One of the things that come to my mind, of course, are timing is everything. Timing is literally a representation of everything. You have more than you know, because what you have is your chromosome count, and that is a representation also of everything. So, something to think about there. But yeah, I mean, we'll find out the meaning of all this. I mean, again, with everything that we're discussing, I do regard it more of like pieces of the puzzle. We'll see how they fit. It's kind of like it's maybe good enough to keep your ear to the ground, and we'll wait and see. So, but yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, and if we are transitioning governments, it's going to be kind of a rough time. So hang in there. All right, so again, I'm Brian Downing, and this has been a trip.